Travis Wayne Goodsell. I've got some time before I need to go for a run, so we'll sneak in a video since I'm up earlier than normal. I'm hoping that those who've been following understand that I'm doing these videos all these years, 4K plus on this channel alone, to try to save your lives, Mormons, even ex-fo nevermos. And it's been a very difficult process to try to save your lives when you don't even recognize you're in danger, and therefore you don't believe that you are in danger, and so you don't listen to me. But it's even worse when I get attacked for trying to save your life because you believe that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is true, or you believe it is Joseph's fault, unaware of people who are so evil they frame and blame others to get away with their wickedness and crime. And I've been trying to get it through to you guys all these years that Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon are Jewish. Pre-Babylonian captivity, Jewish. That means not Christian. And despite Google search, even though now it's being corrupted with AI, you still should be able to know how to search for information on subjects, so that when you go over the first vision, verse 19, that you would know to Google search First Creed of Christianity and see the Nicene Creed, and then find the Wikipedia page on it. Scroll down, there's the text. And so you don't necessarily have to know Greek, because they provide the English also for you. And so you see the word consubstantial, even though you have no idea what the Greek is saying. And you should understand that consubstantial means not real, without substance. But Christians are also in the same cultish trap that Mormons and ex-foes who leave the church are still in. This is why ex-foes talk about, or even nevermos also, talk about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as being a cult. They've redefined cult because of psychology, who's redefined cult, but nonetheless, it's because of the brainwashing that Mormons undergo in this church by this leadership. And so you see ex-fo or ex-mo Lex, who constantly repeats videos to talk about the bite model created by a psychologist, which is incomplete and inaccurate because psychologists are cultish. They claim they're helping people with addictions by making you addicted to them. Yeah, I see fraud. But nonetheless, this is a situation of danger that everybody is in. Nobody is going to the source. Everybody is arguing about external stuff that branches out from the source. And so I've tried to explain in different ways over all these years, different video presentations to try to get through to you. And with the church wanting me dead and silenced, YouTube under orders to do it. It's been a hard, long road, and I can't wait for this to all end. So I had a comment this morning by Solomon Stello. He says, "Who the hell are you? How dare you criticize other commentators?" So I checked. He only does one video. It's just one. It has something to do with piano playing, I think. Arpeggiated pattern W04 piano. 40 seconds. Just the one video. It was 3 years ago. He had 10 views. So apparently he took it personally as a creator on YouTube. He has a number of playlists. Learning French, culture, another language, DIY building, training, criminal enterprise, hunting, dogs. So he hunts and eats dogs. Is he Haitian? Nobody sees the abuse that's going on in the world. Everybody think it's just, people just say stuff and people believe it. Nobody checks the sources. And so the comment was on my LDS church president reveals Adam on Diamond priesthood meeting as ... It's a long time ago. Already happened, most likely. And so you see the thumbnail picture, and it's got Nelson, where I was able to get his scowling face. And this is very frustrating, trying to use this, not wanting to cooperate. Of course, I could be being hacked right now. All I'm trying to do is slide it over. It wants to go to the next frame. Travis was not to reveal this sacred secret. So I've got Adam on Diamond in the upper right, which left from Nelson's view, and the infamous book that you'll notice for the last couple of years since I found it. I've been using it a lot and referring to it a lot, especially since of Oakes's leaked talk from 2020, confessing that that's exactly what they're doing, is what is contained in that book. And so he comes to one video of mine. He's only done one video, so I can understand why he thinks I only did this one video and one video only. Didn't bother to check my channel as I checked on him. But the church has been lying to us, deceiving us about everything, because we're Jewish. Book of Mormon, Jewish. Joseph Smith, Jewish, which means the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is lying to us about being Christian. And I exposed the source of what they are trying to keep people from learning. And thus why everybody is arguing about surface stuff and not going to the source. Why is this church lying? What are they covering up? I figured it out, and I'm trying to warn you about it. This church is the great and abominable church. They are cooing America to take away your agency, enslave you, and hurt you, paying the Judas price. All Mormons know and understand Lucifer's plan of happiness. They just believed that it was real. But nonetheless, this is a criminal national security threat. This is far beyond a cult group. They have literally been trying to murder me. I've got the documents, I've got the receipts, and I've been sharing them with you over these years. And this is the frustration. And so it was kind of sad that Mormons were very upset with the General Conference's greatest hits video that I did, even though that it's upwards of 1,800 views now. It's conference time. It's the time for miracles. You want miracles? I give you the LDS. Dun, 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 dun. Everybody should know the best Christmas movie ever. So, there's some disturbing things that I'm seeing on YouTube that's about to collapse because of algorithms. And YouTube doesn't care. They're going to run it into the ground and then take the money and run. That's what Blockbuster did. One Mormon had a video. Well, it's most likely the apologetic group. I didn't care to know who they were. I didn't care to see YouTube was taunting and mocking me by recommending it to me. So if they're going to do that, I'm going to mock these people. His whole video was about new scripture is here. Thumbnail picture had the modern living prophets. And so Mormons are desperate for proving the church is true. And one of the proofs of truth is the fruits that their leaders are a prophet, seer, revelator, and they don't care about translator because neither do the leaders. And that doesn't connect with Mormons. Church doesn't mention it, and so Mormons don't hear it. And so they never go to the scriptures, the source from which the leaders are claiming to be adhering to. But if you were to actually go to them, you'd realize they're not. You know, like the sustaining vote for conference. Find it, I dare you. Give you a hint, section 107, verse 22. Oops. This can't be the true church. But this is where the problem lies, is that this church, in order to claim they are true, says that the new president of the church has the authority to completely change everything. The religion, the doctrine, the theology, the name of the church, everything. Ritual, everything. And so Mormons accept this as true. Because that's what Benson's Truths of the Living Prophet was all about. I don't remember the number, whether it was 11 or 17 or 52, I don't care. And Mormons don't go to the core. In order for this to be true, Brigham Young has to be true, because Brigham Young was the first successor, because Joseph Smith never said any of this crap. And so then you got to go to the core. Did Brigham Young properly, legally have authority to take over as the legitimate successor of Joseph Smith? And so you've got to go to the core. Find the scripture that tells us how to succeed the church. Section 107, verse 22. Nobody did it. Everybody went off on their own tangent, their own branch off, own created church, and they interpreted Joseph Smith their own different way. Brigham Young likewise, turning him Christian. This is not authorized. Not a single one of the branch-offs, even the Community of Christ, with Joseph Smith's son, are authorized to start up their own church, even if they're calling it a successive branch-off. They didn't do it right. Joseph Smith's religion is gone. Nobody wants to come to grips with this. Expo never knows. Why didn't you catch on to this? That's all you had to tell Brighamites. Brigham Young was not authorized. He didn't do it right. Case closed. So you don't need to worry about any of the claims that Brigham Young makes, or any of the crimes that Brigham Young did, even when blaming Joseph Smith for them. And any of the current leadership, what they say, what they do, doesn't matter. Brigham Young wasn't authorized, so therefore nobody is authorized. There is no authorization to hold conference. There is no authorization to lead a church. There is no authorization to demand that Mormons obey, that Mormons pay. This is a con. And I told you why. The church is going to coup America, cause the bloodbath. Blame it on Jesus. And so this new scripture, it's because Mormons are stuck between what Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon says versus how it's supposed to be interpreted according to this organization. That it's literal history, that it's Christian, and thus creates the conundrums in Mormonism. And so Mormons are desperate to prove the church is true and are in denial that it's a futile attempt. It can never be done because they didn't go to the core. It's not about Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon being literal history true as Christian, as this church tells you. You need to go to Brigham Young. Is Brigham Young authorized? Answer is no. But these people think that conference time is new scripture. They're not authorized to write scripture. Joseph Smith warned you of this. Section 43 of the Doctrine and Covenants, Section 28 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Even in the Book of Mormon stories, you have Alma, who leaves the priests of King Noah and teaches the people the words of Abinadi only, because he understands he has no authority to preach his own doctrine. We are taught this as Mormons, and it's not clicking for Mormons. They're not going to the source. So, no. The prophets aren't even prophets. They're con men. This church is not a church. It's a corporation. You've got to know the real church history. That the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that was incorporated by Brigham Young in 1852 was dissolved by the United States of America and was never reincorporated. Heber J. Grant, who was deceiving Mormons by claiming he was the legitimate successor since 1887, when the Brigham's Church was dissolved, finally incorporated the corporation, not a religion. Said the Articles of Incorporation say that he is organizing a corporation and using those who were of Brigham Young's religion as the cash cows to fund the corporation. The Articles of Incorporation say that this organization is a fraud, a criminal fraud. And so they are not authorized to make changes to Joseph Smith's scripture. They are not authorized to give an alternate interpretation of the Jewish scripture, Jewish Joseph Smith. So the next video that YouTube mocked me with was from the Apologetic Wannabe group, talking about a response, the latest psychological manipulation fraud on YouTube, response videos. As the news is even allowing for this spread of spam to destroy everything. Angel Nephi was a clerical error, not a cover-up. So I'm guessing they found one of my videos, think that I'm spreading the word, because Expo Nevermos don't give a damn about Moroni versus Nephi. They're more concerned about mocking Mormons for golden plates that don't exist, and don't care that Joseph Smith said gold. What are they leaving out? See, they're taking you away from verse 1. They're referring to the Joseph Smith Papers. The Joseph Smith Papers says, by Royal Skousen, who worked on it, that Nephi was a clerical error, that Doctrine and Covenants, section 27, verse 5, is Moroni. Therefore, Joseph Smith was wrong in 1838, even though it was not published until 1842, and thus had years to edit it correctly to make sure that he didn't make an error. Because if you didn't know, Joseph Smith would edit things before they were published. All of his talks, he edited them first before publishing them. He did not make the change. He's aware that he had given section 27, verse 5, but he didn't make the change. He didn't say the right name of the church. He didn't say that it was Jesus. He didn't say golden. What these apologists are doing are claiming that Joseph is not the leader of the church, that he's fallible, he makes errors, and therefore Brigham Young, through Willard Richards, as we are informed by Royal Skousen, is authorized to correct Joseph Smith. But this is a diversionary tactic, because though by itself Willard Richards could be justified in changing it to Moroni because of Doctrine and Covenants 27:5. However, verse 1 actually condemns Willard Richards, exposes Willard Richards as the evil disposed and designing person militating against Joseph Smith and the Church of the Latter-day Saints by putting Jesus in the name of the church, the great and abominable church, Christianity. Not complicated, guys. And Willard Richards was under orders of Brigham Young. Go to the source. And so, yes, it is a cover-up. By putting the wrong name of the church in Joseph Smith's document, it is a cover-up. And therefore, what Joseph Smith was exposing, that they are covering up, is that section 115 is a forged document. And it was put in Brigham Young's Doctrine and Covenants the year before he died. And it's dated to before Joseph Smith's 1838 visionary account. And thus why it was called a history and added to the other historical documents of the church. This was separate. This was published separate. History of the Church as a publication was by Willard Richards. Need to know the source. Tim Ballard's in the news again. He's now suing Miss Utah or Miss America, I think Miss Utah, 2004. And as a guy, I can understand both arguments. One, that he's a man and therefore a sexual predator. Two, that he thinks he's a cop protecting trafficked children from sex trafficking, and that he needs to go undercover. I know both sides. It is a little disturbing, but Mormon girls are raised up in ignorance and naivete to be kept from the evils of the world. And here Tim Ballard thinks he's saving little girls. And so as a undercover cop, they have to commit crimes. And it's for the intention of getting bigger fish, figuring out the whole criminal operation. And it gets frustrating that these undercover cops go undercover for years without producing results, without getting arrests. And then they become addicted to drugs, they get involved in the sex trafficking themselves, and they justify it saying, you know, I'm just so close, we're just so close getting to the bigger fish that's involved in this. And we see the movies, we see the TV shows. And I can understand. And so women who he's recruiting come to him to save kidnapped children. And so Miss Utah, if she went to Tim Ballard on her own saying, I want to help, I want to be a part of saving sex trafficked girls. And he should have told her, well, we need to go undercover, and you're going to have to do some things that are going to be very uncomfortable if we're going to save these kids. We've got to pretend to be interested in buying these girls that are being kidnapped. And so we need to look like a couple who's sexually active. And so if Tim Ballard actually sought out these Utah women and misled them about going undercover, which the text messages seem to indicate Tim Ballard did inform them that they were going undercover. But the lawyer for Miss Utah seems to want to claim otherwise for his client. I can understand both sides. And so, yes, as a guy, yeah, I fully understand. In order for humans to be created, both men and women have to have sexy thoughts. And both men and women, when their sexy thoughts hit, tend to do things they normally wouldn't do when they don't have sexy thoughts. Otherwise, the human race would cease to exist on the face of the earth. And so, yes, I know very well that when sexy thoughts happen and there's a woman in our presence, we say things that we normally wouldn't say, all for the sole purpose of making babies. It's what we both do. But the church does not want to teach sex ed. The church holds us in sexual bondage by threatening both of us not to have sexy thoughts, and that we have to pay the church in order to be worthy to go to the temple, and then we can have sex after paying the prostitution price and continuing to pay the prostitution price for the rest of our lives to have sex within marriage, a temple marriage. Because if it's not a temple marriage, it doesn't count for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so this incorrectly educates Mormons about our sexual natures and the sexual natures of the other sex. And so Mormons get into marriage, and all of a sudden their wives no longer give them sex. And now the men are being sexually abused in the marriage because of the damage that the church caused. And so I understand that by Tim Ballard. He's going undercover. He's separated from his wife. He's thinking he needs to pose as a pervert wanting to purchase underage girls in order to understand the operation and shut it all down. And so he's got to have sex with other women. He's got to go to the strip clubs and the bars and all that stuff to drink alcohol, to get a lap dance from the girls, to ejaculate on their dress that the woman would then keep for years as evidence, to then have it tested for the court trial. But there's a difference in whether or not Tim Ballard was legitimate, as his business was such. P. Diddy, it was not his business to go undercover to rescue girls. It was his business to specifically sex traffic them with baby oil. And so there's a big difference in the two cases. But this is where prosecution need to make sure that they're not leaving out evidence for Tim Ballard, that the defense is a legitimate defense attorney, not a court-assigned attorney that just wants to... So yeah, there's a big difference. But when women are not educated sexually, when men are not educated sexually, this kind of chaos is a natural consequence. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is responsible for Tim Ballard and the legal case that's going on right now. That's very clear and obvious, and nobody wants to admit it. Also in the news, another therapist type person here in the state of Utah arrested for child rape. Therapists are getting exposed as the frauds they are. They are not a legitimate company. They have to make people addicted to them in order to get business. Humans are their cash cows. And so they've got to create a problem to get paid. They've got to make people addicted to them to get paid. And now we're seeing the consequences with the church's sexual abuse of lack of education that is producing the fruits in therapy as well. That's why the church excommunicated Natasha Helfer, because she used medical science for sex ed, mingled with the fallacy arguments of psychology. And then another YouTube mockery recommendation was by a person who is going over the Book of Mormon. They're in 3rd Nephi, and so I'm sure since this is the Book of Mormon year, we're nearing the end of the year. So 3rd Nephi is the lesson for Sunday school. And they're talking about no fire being mentioned. And this was actually back in 1st Nephi. But regardless of that external argument, rather than the core source argument of who wrote the Book of Mormon, since it's Jewish, which was Sidney Rigdon, and Senior had to rewrite the 116 pages. Therefore, Junior was not writing the book. That's an external argument of vanity. Whether Joseph Smith used a rock and a hat, whether he made it all up off the top of his head, doesn't matter, it's all wrong. Both sides are arguing this wrong. Mormons, Expo, Nevermos, you're all wrong. You are not accepting the facts. You can't leave stuff out. Just like lawyers, they can't leave out evidence that vindicates the defendant if you're the prosecution. You can't do a case and leave out the evidence that vindicates the defendant. You shouldn't have even brought the case if you know the defendant is innocent. You have to know that he's guilty. You cannot leave out evidence. Likewise for the defense. If the lawyer gets a confession from his client that he's guilty, that he committed crimes, the lawyer can't lie in court. In most cases, the lawyer then recuses himself so as not to incriminate himself in the courtroom. So he especially can't leave that information out. That's why he has to recuse himself, because otherwise he is required to inform the courts that his client is guilty. And people think that they are not allowed to do that. I went over this with you yesterday. Crime is not a protected right. And so if the client confesses that they committed the crime, the lawyer has a duty and responsibility, having passed the bar and gotten a license, being educated, he is now required to report the crime. So as his lawyer, he has to tell the client, I now have to tell the court that you are guilty, that you confessed. I cannot withhold that evidence from this case. Thus, lawyers should tell the client in advance, if you tell me anything that incriminates you, I will have to report it. It is not a violation of patient or attorney-client privilege. Crime is not an excuse for that. Same with psychologists. If there's a criminal confession, it cannot be withheld. It is not doctor-patient confidentiality. If a clergyman hears a confession of a crime, it is not religious client member privilege. It must be reported. Crime must be reported. It cannot be covered up. The justice system is ruined because people are covering up their crimes, giving excuses why they have to cover it up. Okay, so go for my run, do the video, and then I'll come back and talk about the Jewish latter days. Maybe.